Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're going to learn how to implement master-slave routing using Spring JPA. In the previous videos, we did this using JDBC. Now we'll take the same concept and apply it to JPA, which is what most real-world Spring Boot applications use. So let's get started and see how this works with Spring JPA. So let's talk about option 1 for implementing master-slave using Spring JPA. This approach is actually very similar to what we already learned earlier, when we discussed multi-data source configuration in Spring Boot. Because of that, I'm not going to code this approach completely again. The idea and structure are almost the same. Here's how this approach works conceptually. Step 1. We define two separate data source beans. One for the master database. One for the slave database. Step 2. For each data source, we configure dedicated JPA components. Entity Manager Factory. Platform Transaction Manager. Step 3. We use a common entity model, meaning the same JPA entity classes are shared by both master and slave databases. Step 4. We create two repository layers. Master repository handles write operations. Insert, update, delete. Slave repository handles read operations. Select queries. Step 5. We control database access explicitly. Use the master repository for write or write-read transactions. Use the slave repository for read-only queries. So this approach is completely similar to a normal multi-data source setup. We simply treat the master and slave as two different databases, even though logically they belong to the same system. Just like in multi-data source configuration, we create two repositories, and for each repository, we explicitly tell Spring which entity manager it should use. The master repository is wired with the master entity manager, and the slave repository is wired with the slave entity manager. From the service layer, we manually decide which repository to call, exactly the same way we do in multi-data source projects. So there's nothing new conceptually here. If you already understand multi-data source with JPA, then you already understand this approach. If you haven't watched the last video, I strongly recommend you pause here and watch that first. Because in this video, we're going to use the exact same approach. The routing data source approach. Just look at my screen for a moment. In the previous video, we created a routing data source bean, where we passed all the data sources, master and slave, and added routing logic on top of them. That routing data source internally decided which database to use, based on the routing key, master or slave. Now here's the most important thing to understand. JPA works on top of a data source. So instead of changing the idea or the routing logic, we're simply going to reuse the same routing data source. But this time we'll plug it into JPA, instead of using JDBC template. The concept remains exactly the same, only the integration layer changes. Once you understand this, the JPA configuration becomes very straightforward. As you can see on my screen, routing data source is our own custom class. It extends Spring's abstract routing data source, which is specifically designed for dynamic data source routing. Inside this class, we override just one method: determine current lookup key. This method is the key to everything. From here, we simply return dbContextHolder.getDBType. That value, master or slave, is used by Spring to decide which data source should handle the current request. So whenever JPA or JDBC tries to access the database, Spring calls this method first, gets the routing key from the thread context, and then automatically picks the correct data source. This is why the routing logic stays clean, centralized, and completely independent of JPA or JDBC. Now look at this class, dbContextHolder. This class uses threadLocal to store which database should be used for the current request. Before any database operation starts, we set the value here, either master or slave, because Spring processes each request on its own thread. threadLocal ensures that this value is safely isolated per request. Later, when routing data source is invoked. It simply reads this value from DB context holder and returns it as the routing key. Alright, before we write any JPA code, the very first thing we need to do is update our dependencies. Right now, this project is using the Spring JDBC starter. Since we're switching to Spring JPA, we'll replace that with the Spring Data JPA starter. Alright, next we need to create a local container entity manager factory bean. And there's nothing new or special here. This is exactly the same way we did it when we configured JPA with multi-data source earlier. This bean needs two important things. First, the data source. And second, the JPA properties. Inject in this method. For the data source, we're going to use the same routing data source. Exactly the one we used earlier with JDBC template. Nothing changes here. The routing data source will first decide whether the request should go to the master or the slave, and only then provide the actual database connection. From JPA's perspective, this is just a normal data source. All the routing logic remains centralized and completely transparent to JPA. Alright, now let's actually create the local container entity manager factory bean. Set the data source. And as discussed, this will be our routing data source. Next, set packages to scan and point it to the package where our JPA entities are located. After that, set the persistence unit name. This name is important internally for JPA and transaction management. Finally, configure the JPA vendor adapter. Since we're using Hibernate, I'll use Hibernate JPA vendor adapter here. Set JPA properties. Alright, the next step is to create the transaction manager. Since we're using JPA, we'll create a JPA transaction manager. As you can see, Everything we've created here is exactly the same as a normal JPA multi-data source setup. There is only one difference. Instead of using a direct master or slave data source, we're using the routing data source. Because of that, all the routing logic, master versus slave, is handled automatically before JPA even gets a connection. From JPA's point of view, nothing special is happening at all. This is why this approach is so powerful. Clean configuration, reusable routing logic. Alright, now that our Entity Manager Factory and Transaction Manager are ready, the next step is to enable JPA repositories and transaction management. This tells Spring, hey, this application is using JPA. Scan for repositories and manage transactions automatically. Alright, our JPA configuration is complete now. The next step is to configure the employee entity. But there's nothing new here. We already did this in our multi-data source video. So instead of writing everything again, I'm simply going to copy and paste the employee entity from that project. Same annotations, same mappings. Everything stays exactly the same. Alright, our employee entity is ready. Now let's create the employee JPA repository. And again, there's nothing new here at all. This is a standard Spring Data JPA repository. Exactly the same way we've created repositories in all our previous JPA examples. No special annotations. No routing logic here. Everything stays clean and simple. The routing happens underneath, at the data source level. Just follow my screen. Alright, the repository is ready now. Next, let's update our controller to use this JPA repository. Inject the employee JPA repository here. I'm unable to access all JPA methods here. I debugged it offline and found the root cause, but it seems to be a build issue, so I'm not spending more time on it. I've decided to upgrade to the next higher version. Okay, now I am injecting employee JPA repository here and updating the code in the controller. Alright, everything is wired up now. Let's start the application. Alright, the application failed to start. And the error message says it's looking for an Entity Manager Factory bean. But it can't find it. This is a very common issue when working with custom JPA configurations. The problem is simple. In our @enable JPA repositories annotation, we didn't explicitly tell Spring which Entity Manager Factory and which Transaction Manager these repositories should use. So Spring is trying to guess. And that's where it goes wrong. The fix is straightforward. Inside @enable JPA repositories, I'll update two attributes: Entity Manager Factory Ref, Transaction Manager Ref, and I'll point them to the exact bean names that we created earlier. Let me make that change now. Just follow my screen. Now let's start the application again. The application is up now. Let's hit our Get API. Perfect. We got a proper response. The employee details for ID 102 are coming back correctly. This confirms that our Get API using JPA is working fine. And the read operation is being handled as expected. Alright, now let's hit the Add Employee API. And there you go. You can see it on my screen. The employee has been saved successfully, which means the right operation using JPA is correctly routed to the master database. Alright, now for verification. I'm going to stop the slave database server. This will help us clearly confirm whether our read operations are really going to the slave. Once the slave is down, if the Get API fails, that's a strong proof that routing is working correctly. Let me stop the slave database now. Alright, my slave database is down now. Let's hit the Get API and see what happens. And as you can see, we're getting an error now. This is exactly what we expected. Since the slave database is down and our Get API is routed to the slave, the request fails immediately. This clearly confirms that our read operations using JPA are truly hitting the slave database, not the master. Now, while the slave database is still down, let's hit the Add Employee API. This is a write operation, so it should still work because it goes to the master database. And look at this. It worked successfully. Even though the slave database is down, the Add Employee API is still working perfectly. This is the final confirmation that write operations are going to the master, and read operations are going to the slave. Alright everyone, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, hit the like button, and don't forget to comment and press the bell icon, so you never miss the next video. See you in the next one.